Hello students, welcome to VHS e-classes, and today we are going to discuss another important topic of nursing research, that is the types of qualitative researches. In a previous lecture, we have discussed some of the basic concepts related to qualitative research. Qualitative researches are the kind of inquiry where we collect the in-depth information from the subjects. So the purpose of qualitative research is to understand the phenomena in detail. So related to that, the another topic is types of qualitative research. So without wasting a time, let's talk about what are the various types. So if you look at this slide, you can see that there are various types as we have discussed, but if you see the major category, number one is a phenomenological research, number two is a ethnographic research, number three is a grounded theory research studies, number 4 is a historical research, and number 5 is a case studies researches. All these, so how many it is? 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So please remember these 5 different types of qualitative researches. There could be some other researches, but these are the most important one. If you look at the first one, phenomenological, so if I just say one word meaning of that, phenomenological study the lived experience. What they study? They study the lived experience of a person, experience that you live. Ethnography study the culture. That is the main purpose of ethnographic research, to study the culture. Grounded theory researches is basically or primarily deal with the theory development. Theory development. Okay, that is the purpose. Historical research study the historical facts. Historical facts to understand the past and to relate that with the present. Case study is an in-depth study. In-depth study of social units. Social units could be an individual or a society or a family, but study in detail. So if you look at the one meaning or one word meaning of all these types of designs, phenomenological study the experiences that you live 24/7. Ethnographic study the culture. Grounded theory study about the theoretical development, okay, theory development or concept development. Historical research study the historical facts to relate that with the present and predict the future. Whereas the case study talks about the in-depth detailed study of a social units. Let's talk about these designs one by one. First, we'll take on the phenomenological study. So as I said, phenomenological research are the approaches where we study the people's life experiences. And what kind of experiences? It is the ordinary life experiences. Okay, that's why we say ordinary life experiences, the experiences with that you live, the experiences which you don't need to memorize are known as ordinary experiences. Okay, like for example, you are in a classes, you're talking with your friends, okay, you're going in a lab or in a library. So these are the conscious or unconscious experiences or behavior with that you live 24/7, and most of the lived experiences are not even you are not aware of that. So that kind of experience we call it a lived experience. So qualitative study, the phenomenological research study about the people's life experiences. They examine the human experience through the description that are provided by the people involved in it. That's a very, very important point here. Who provide the information about the experiences? People who involved in it. Now suppose I just want to study someone's experience related to the retirement. So everyone can say something about retirement, but if you are conducting a phenomenological research, it is only the person who actually experiencing the retirement, who has retired from a job, only can provide the information. Okay, so these experiences are called as a lived experiences, because you are so primarily the person who is a participant for phenomenological researchers are those who primarily had that experiences or have a first-hand experience of that. The goal of this type of research to describe the meaning that experiences hold for each subject. And we believe that and we assume that phenomenological researches, okay, they believe that it is about the experiences which are very unique and subjective from person to person. Okay, so that's the main purpose. Now, here what is I have highlighted here, what is the essence of this phenomena as experienced by these people and what does it mean? Please remember this particular point. What is the essence of this phenomena? Okay, and what does it mean? So what is the essence means? Essence means essentiality, the most important ingredients of things. Okay, if I give an example, like what is the most important essence of this lecture? So the essence of this lecture is a qualitative research. Without this lecture would not be a lecture of a qualitative research. So essence means every experience has some essential ingredient that define that phenomena. Okay, like for example, if we say marriage, what is the essence of marriage? Essence of marriage is it's a matching of two people, two individual, okay, or two families. So essence is that. What is the essence of a principal? It's the head of the institution. What is the essence of a student? Study. Study is the essence of a student. Okay, so please understand that. So we always try to find the essence. Now, what are the basic assumptions we follow while conducting this qualitative phenomenological research? There is an essence of an essential variant structure of every phenomena. Every phenomena or every experience has a essential ingredients, okay, and which vary from person to person. Trust about reality are grounded in the people's lived experiences. So, how you find the reality? How you find the truth? The truth you can identify by studying the people's lived experiences, which are grounded into that. You don't need to understand the phenomena theoretically. You have to understand, or sorry, if you want to understand the reality or a truth, that is grounded in the people's experiences which they lived with. Human existence is a meaningful and engaging, and that is why this assumption make it possible that it is a meaningful. So every individual or experience has its own meaning, and that meaning the researcher always try to understand. Being in the world or embodiment is a concept that acknowledge people's physical tie with the world. So awareness of being in the world, okay, that we believe that the phenomenologists believe that there is a acknowledgement of an individual regarding what? Regarding its relationship with the surroundings, its impact, that lived in time, lived in space, lived in body, lived in corporeality or relationship. So that awareness and acknowledgement of that awareness make this research possible. People are conscious of their interaction with the world, and because of that awareness, that in this third assumption, the fourth assumption talk about the people aware. Okay, they are conscious about their interaction. So these are the some of the important assumptions for that. Next, we'll talk about what are the types of phenomenology. So basically, there are two types of phenomenology, as you can see. One is a descriptive phenomenology that is developed by the Husserl, and the primary question here is of this school of thought is, what do we know as a person? What do we know as a person? Now I'll go to that this assumption here. What do we know? We always have a meaning into our existence. That is the assumption for that. So what do we know as an individual, as a person? That is the main primary question here. Primarily, the descriptive phenomenology focuses on the description of the human behavior. They just describe, okay, and what they describe ordinary conscious experiences. Again I say, ordinary conscious experiences. Any experience based on your memory is not a subject area of phenomenological research. That's why that when you conduct the phenomenological research, it's go very smooth in a flow, because you are only talking about the people's conscious experiences, what they are doing. It is not about any special incidents or a thing. It is about the ordinary life experiences. So primarily, the Husserl has given the descriptive phenomenology, and the primary purpose is what? What do we know as a person? And when we know and acknowledge this, then that put a meaning into our existence. So it is more like a philosophical, okay, phenomenology. Second type of phenomenological research is a interpretive phenomenology, or it is also called as a hermeneutics. So it is proposed by the Heidegger. Okay, so Heidegger says the primary question is what is being in the world. It is more philosophical. Okay, it's more abstract. What do I know as a person? I describe my conscious experiences to other, and the phenomenologist will record my experiences as it is without interfering. That is a descriptive research. What is interpretive? It is what is being, what is the meaning of this, what was stated, what was the symbol, how it was presented, and the meaning that lies behind that incidence and experience. That is interpretive. So they are more, insightful understanding of the phenomena. So this school of thought focuses on interpretation and understanding of the human experiences. You see the name hermeneutics. What is the name of hermeneutics? It's basically, literal meaning of hermeneutic is that these are the religious, teacher who always put a meaning. Like if you go to the Ramayana, Mahabharata, or any other religious epic, it has its own language, and there are people who explain the meaning of that. These people are known as a hermeneutics. So the role of phenomenologist here is to act as a hermeneutics. So they will give the meaning, they will interpret, they'll be more reflective in terms of understanding the phenomena. Whereas in descriptive phenomenology, what we do, we just only describe what they are doing. We are putting meaning there as well. It is not a simply descriptive quantitative research, it is qualitative. But without interfering much, we do description. In interpretive, we just try to find the meaning, okay, behind of anything. Like for example, if suppose you visit a temple and you see the people are giving some amount, okay, as a donation. So descriptive phenomenologist will just write the story, okay, that in this culture they have to donate some amount for the welfare of society. Now what interpretive phenomenologist will do? They will be more in depth, they'll study more in depthly what exactly they are doing, how they are doing, what they are donating, how the donation work, what exactly the meaning, what is the intention, what motivate people to do that. Okay, so all these things are the subject area of interpretive phenomenology. So I hope that it is clear to you. They assume that the lived experiences is an interpretive process and advocate the understanding of the basic characteristics of human existence, and this process is called as hermeneutics. Okay, so understanding the basic process of anything. So if I move next, before that, if I tell you descriptive, describe and phenomena as it exists with its own in-depth understanding, whereas interpretive is a more insightful. They not only describe, they describe with reflection. Okay, so that is about these two types. Now what are the data sources in phenomenological researches? So as like for all the qualitative researches, we have discussed in-depth conversation, unstructured observation, focus group discussions, at multiple settings. Yes, remember, it's not about the one setting. You cannot, cater the experiences of the people at sitting at one place. You have to be roaming with them. You have to adapt a mobile approach. Okay, so maybe some time where they're playing with talking with the friends, or they're sitting at home or watching television or whatever they are doing. So you have to be with them. Focus group discussion. So all these are the detailed methods we are going to discuss in the next unit, methods of data collection. But overall, I would say data sources in phenomenology is a in-depth. It is a very unstructured or usually in-depth. So it's an in-depth interview, or it's observations, okay, or it's a kind of a what I say, observation of the surroundings. So with that you come to know that. Researcher help the participant to describe the lived experience without leading the discussion. That's the important point. Okay. So people, your job as a researcher is to just listen to them. Your role is as a shadow person. So you should not encourage any kind of discussion. Okay. You should only listen what they're saying. Of course, you have to lead, so people will be more vocal to answer. And you know how long you are going to conduct the interview? Till the data saturation. So already I have told you the meaning of data saturation. So if you know the answer, please write me in a comment box what is data saturation and how do we achieve it. Thank you. Next is what is sample size for phenomenological researches. So usually it's a small sample size. Qualitative researches mainly focus on in-depth understanding of the phenomena. So sample size is up to the data saturation. Usually I'm saying here is a 10, but not usually 10, it's a less than 10. Sometimes it's 20 as well, but depending on the data saturation. Okay. So data saturation principle is followed where the researcher stop collecting the collection once thus they start gaining the repetitive information. That principle we have to follow. Then what is data analysis? So analysis involves the discovering the meaning of the lived experiences of each subjects. So we do a thematic analysis. You will remember this thematic analysis. That is the one important form, not only for this but most of the qualitative researches we go for we make the categories. From the categories we identify the subcategories, and then we make a main categories or core category, what we call that, and from there we just get the themes. Okay, so that is a data analysis, how we do qualitative data analysis. These days we have so many software, they also what we call that QDA. Okay, qualitative data analysis software, so that we can use. So that is about the phenomenological research. So if I say in a one shot, what is phenomenological research? It is the research, it's a qualitative research that studies someone's lived experiences. Usually there are two types of phenomenological research: descriptive, where we study and describe the people's conscious lived experiences, and second we have a interpretive, where we are more insightful and reflective in describing the people's experiences. Then in this kind of research, usually the data collection is being done by unstructured methods like in-depth interview and observation. Okay, and data saturation is the basic principle till that we collect the data. Okay, so sample size usually is very small, and the analysis that what we do is a thematic analysis. So that's all about the phenomenological research. Okay, next we'll talk about the another important research in qualitative category, that is a ethnographic research. Now what is ethnographic research? So it is a something study the culture. Okay, it is a study of the culture. So it is a systematic process of observing, detailing, describing, documenting and analyzing the life ways of a particular pattern of a culture or a subculture in order to grasp the life way or a pattern of people in their familiar environment. So the focus of ethnography is to study the culture of the society. Okay, so the focus here is to culture. The basic assumption is that every human evolved a culture that guides the member view of the world and the way they structure their experiences. Okay, so please understand this assumption. The assumption is every human evolve around a culture, and that culture govern the behavior. So if you really want to understand the reason or the motives behind anyone's behavior, you can study their culture. So they take culture as a determinant, and they also assume that everyone evolve around a culture. Not only the human, all the living creatures just evolve around a culture. Now, when you talk about the perspective of ethnography, so whenever you study someone's culture, okay, you have a two perspective. One is an insider view, that is an emic view, and then we have an etic view, that is an outsider view. So what is an emic view? Insider view, the way the member of a culture imagine their own world. Okay, that is an insider, because whenever you study someone's culture, so if you ask the member of that specific culture how they feel and what they feel about their culture, that is an insider view, their own perspective. Like for example, if someone asks me about my own culture, okay, my social culture, so I may have some opinion of that, okay, these are the positive things or negative things and all, because in getting understanding of the insight of their culture, okay, is very, very important to understand that culture in depth, because many of the behavior that is performed unconsciously by the member of that culture. Like for example, if you go to a temple, you see the most of the everybody will remove the chappal and shoes, and then they will go. So maybe it is not written anywhere, but people unconsciously follow that. Okay, like as teacher enter in a class, everybody stand up. No, there is nowhere written that this is the way to give respect. But the same thing in Japan, they may have a different culture for that. So when you have the insider view will make it more illuminative. Okay, what is the outsider view? What other think about your culture? Okay, interpretation of the experiences of that culture. So here what we do, we strive to get cultural experiences that member do not talk about or may not even be consciously aware. That is an outsider view. Okay, so because as I said, cultural norms and mores are so introjected into our personality or in day-to-day life. So for many of the things that we do are not aware by the people. Okay, so we are not aware about many of the things. So outsider view means if an outsider person is looking and observing your behavior or understanding the reason for that behavior, that we call a ethic view or outsider view. So if you really want to have a comprehensive understanding of someone's culture, you should have the both the perspective, the amic view, insider view, as well as the outsider view. Okay, so that is about the perspective. Now what are the types of ethnographic? So there are two basic types, as you can see here. One is a macro ethnography and second one is a micro ethnography. So name itself indicate macro ethnography. They study broadly defined culture. For example, all the nurses in India and Australia, here the focus is on to learn broad aspect of the culture. Okay, we are not going to study things very minutely, but we study the overall culture. Okay, then what is a micro ethnography? Study the culture using a very narrow focused. Okay, they select any one or two units of that culture and then they study that in detail. Okay, so for example, narrowly defined groups such as nurses working in emergency department or studying the culture of nursing supervisors. So like when I go and study overall culture of a nursing department in a specific hospital, that become a macro ethnography, whereas I only specifically study how the nurses have a culture of communication with each other related to the patient. So that become a micro ethnography. Okay, the subunit that you study in detail. So that is about the types. So macro, please remember there is a two types, macro ethnography and micro ethnography. Now what are the types of information in ethnography? So how do we collect information in ethnography and what information we collect? So ethnographer learn the cultural behavior, give exhaustive description and interpretation of what? Of three things. Number one, it talks about the cultural artifacts. What group make in use? Cultural speech, what people says, and cultural behavior, that is what people do. Okay, so cultural artifacts, these are the symbols, these are the what exactly group are doing to make the ease of their life. Okay, how the culture is being so introjected into their personality. So that is the artifacts. You see that every culture having its own artifacts, its own symbols, its own tradition. So all that we study in a cultural artifacts. Cultural speech, what people say. So you mainly as an ethnographer, what you focus? You focus what people are saying. Okay, so either by adapting the emic view or by or having the etic view. Then cultural behavior, what exactly people do. Okay, so the method here we try to conceptualize, even it is not exclusively for all type of ethnography, but you can see you begin with a selection of a culture. That is the first thing that you should have, that understanding ki what culture or subculture you want to study, you have to define it. Then next is you just cultural immersion of the researcher. Yeah, that is a very, very important. Okay, so what is the cultural immersion of the culture? You should you do little about that culture Okay, because that becomes very, very important to understand their artifacts, understand their behavior. Okay, and that will ease your process of gaining entry into the site. Sometimes we say ethnographer don't study someone's culture. What they do, they learn someone's culture by adapting a role into their culture, into their society. So the immersion is very, very important. Cultural immersion is very, very important, where you try to understand the basics of their culture, the culture you are going to study. Then you gain entrance into the population under study. That is very, very important. So something I'm introducing a word here is a wild windshield survey. What is that? Windshield survey. Now please, again I request you, please, if you know this, what is windshield survey, please answer me in a comment box. Okay, so it's very, very important, because for ethnography is a kind of thing where you study someone's culture. So means you want to be more close to their people. Okay, and we know that people don't want to share their culture or everything of their culture to the stranger. So your entry to their society, to that culture, become very, very important. If you have been perceived as a stranger into that culture, people will not tell you the information. Like for example, if suppose an American want to study the dowry system in India by attending the marriages, and we know that this person want to study about the dowry system, so usually people will hide it. Everything will be visible there, but nobody will talk about dowry, and usually nobody talks about dowry, right, openly. So gaining entry is very, very important, because if you want, it is an essential requirement for ethnographic research that you should become very close to your participant, key informant. Okay, key informant means a person who is providing you the information. So you have to develop a good rapport and trust with them, and for that reason the entrance is very important, very, very important. So it is always advisable, whenever you want to study a culture, always first try to make a good rapport with the leaders of that culture. Maybe you can meet with the local people, okay, who has a good reputation there, or school teachers or a sarpanch. These people can help you to easy access to the people. And once you go with the familiar person, then only they will tell you about their cultural informations. Okay, so then lives with the population. Now that's very, very important. Many times, like I remember that once one of my MSc student was doing ethnographic research. So it was the concern for most of the people in an ethical committee, that how she's going to study that culture, because ethnographic culture means you have to live with them. It is not about what they're describing, it is about learning their culture. So how will you learn their culture? By living with them. So that is the next point. So, okay, you have to be with them. Okay, there are many terms which I'm not using here to make it easy or simple, but there is another term, please remember, joting. Okay, what is joting? And please answer me in a comment box if you know that what is joting. It is one of the important technique that ethnographer adapt while being in a field. So they have to live there. Then obtained informant. What is informant? A person who provides the information, a person who is having a rich information on a topic. So someone with a culture that act as a guide or interpreter. Okay, sometime you might have seen on a Discovery Channel or National Geographic Channel, many researchers conduct the cultural study of a tribal groups. So they may not understand the languages, so they always take a translator or the people who can always have a listening role between the ethnographer and the people in the culture. Okay, so once you do that, so what you do, first have a basic understanding of your culture. One second. First, have a basic understanding of their culture by reading from literature. But remember, you should not do any in-depth literature review here. Just have a basic understanding. Then gaining entry, that is the second point, that is very, very important. So always we advise to have a listening and rapport with the people over there first, especially with the leaders of that culture. Then you live with them. So basically you have to learn their culture. And the fourth point is just obtain the informant and collect the information from that. And finally you end with data analysis. Okay, and you can develop the theories or you can describe the themes, like as phenomenological research you can go for the thematic analysis. There are different types of analysis for qualitative researches. like for phenomenal, for ethnographic. So that we are going to discuss in a subsequent sections, okay, when we'll talk about the analysis of the qualitative data. So again we'll do. But if you ask me here, how do we analyze? So there are 4 different ways of analyzing the ethnographic. Okay, so there is a like domain analysis, taxonomic analysis, okay, conceptual, contextual analysis, and thematic analysis. Okay, so that meaning of all that we'll discuss in the subsequent lectures. So there's a 12 steps, like, okay, Spreadly actually has done a very wonderful role, who has developed a methods of analyzing the ethnographic research. So that's what we call it 12 steps, okay, 12 steps analysis that we follow in ethnographic. Okay, so what are the sources of information? Same like ethnography, we go for in-depth interviews, records, charts, participants observation. That is another important thing. I'll just talk on this. Artifacts and symbols, that's very, very important. Okay, like I've just, you can copy this link, it is given here, and recently we have published a paper in a NCBI in a PubMed, and that paper is an example of ethnographic research. Okay, everything become a source of information, like what kind of pictures they're putting on the walls, what is the color of their walls, what is their street, what kind of curtains they're using, what artifacts they have. Okay, so with that, we understand their culture. Then all photographs, focus group discussion, okay, all demographic and life histories. So all these information, so it's like a multiple information you have to collect from the sources. Okay, so what is that participant observation? Participant observation is nothing, it is the observing the culture by becoming a participant of that, by taking a active participation in that. As I said, ethnographic research is not about studying the culture, it's about learning the culture and then describing it. So how do you learn? You learn by having the participation, and in that also there are different stages of participation, like initially we have observation with limited participation. Okay, so I'm not going of that complexity because I just assume that most of the UG students are watching these videos. So initially what you do, you adapt your role as a observer with a limited participation. Okay, now you get access to that culture, you went there, now you are observing what others are doing and you are taking limited participation. Second level, once you do that, after some time what you do, you just do a primarily participation is continuous observation. Okay, now you become a primarily participant, you are participating more, but you are continuously observing. So your activity involvement become more in the second stage. So once you become familiar more with that culture, you are becoming more familiar. Then third one is a primarily participating but reflection. What is that? Reflection. So now you not only participating, but now you are trying to understand what people are doing there, how they are doing it and why they are doing. Like for example, if suppose a person in a culture has done something against their norms, now how they have punished this person, what punishment methods they have, who will punish it, okay, who will report it. Now something similar happened after 5 days or 10 days. Now how does this second person was punished, what was the thing he has done against the culture. Constantly you are comparing the difference and similarities in two incidents. So we keep on doing that reflection. And finally immersion. Okay, so primarily to understand the culture, you just go for initial observation, then limited participation, then primarily participation and the reflection. And this process where you enter in a culture as a stranger, as an unfamiliar person, and finally you exist from a culture by becoming a unreached or having an understanding, in-depth understanding of the culture. This process of decoding that culture is known as a acculturation. What we call that? Acculturation. Okay, so this is the one study I have given here. So if I just talk about this research, so you can see here, this is ethnographic research, socio-cultural discourse of children. So I'm not taking much time here, I'll just read some of the important point here. So total sample, how many I have taken? 8 sample I have taken here. And a community based qualitative study using purposive sampling we have used to carried out among the children engaged in child labor. Okay, basically the study was done among the children of child labor. Data were gathered through the in-depth or semi-structured interview, and non-participant observation was done here. Okay, means we have observed them without being a participant. Okay, so 4 phase of study was done. Context, community context assessment was done initially. So what we did there, we just observed their community in the context where they are living. Then egocentric network analysis. Now what is that egocentric network analysis? Now again there is a question. So please, if you can find the answer of this question, egocentric network analysis, please write me in a comment box, or if you want me to answer, then also please let me know. Then validation and dissemination. Okay, then results has come up with so many things here. So that is how we just go to study that. Okay, so that is the example. So I'm just putting this link here. Now next is, so that's about the ethnographic research. Now in a 1 minute, if you want me to answer what is ethnography, so ethnographic research is a qualitative research where we study the culture. The primary assumption of ethnography is that every human evolve around a culture. Primarily there are 2 types of ethnographic research: microethnography, where we study the subculture in detail; macroethnography, where we study broadly defined culture. The sample size usually for ethnography is less, means we follow the data saturation principle, and the various sources of information may be in-depth interview, semi-structured interview, like artifacts, participant observations, focus group discussion, life histories, okay, diaries, all these are the sources. Analysis is being done in a qualitative manner, where we follow the 12 steps analysis described by the Spreadley. So overall I can say the ethnographic study is a detailed study of someone's culture. Now there is another term you should understand, what is ethno-nursing. So what is that? The term is coined by the Leninger, and it defined it is as a study and analysis of the local indigenous people's viewpoint, belief, practices about nursing care behavior and processes of designated culture. So ethno-nursing is nothing about, it's a studying the nursing culture. Okay, it's about the studying the nursing culture. If I study a nursing culture, being a nursing professional, then we call it a auto-ethno-nursing or auto-ethnography. Means a member of the culture study its own culture, then the term is auto-ethnography. Okay, so I hope some of the concept related to that is clear to you.